It's not calling you Josh Frydenberg, it's calling you Dosh Frydenberg.
Under the coalition, taxes for hard-working Australians will always be lower.
You know, I don't hold a hose, mate, and I don't sit in control room.
They're answers that only can come from Victoria, I'm afraid, because that's not my job.
But I ain't spending any time, though, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person was torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Well, g'day, listeners, and welcome once again to the Two Jacks. It's episode 163, recorded on the 2nd of July, 2026. Happy New Year to those who celebrate the financial year, at least in Australia. And joining me, as usual, is Jack. G'day, mate. Hong Kong Jack. How are you, mate?
Good, good. It's the day after Reunification Day here.
Reunification Day. Right. What's that? What's all that about?
1st of July was the handover to the People's Republic. So there's a public holiday each year for that. And
the financial year is different in the UK, isn't it? It's
yes.
Ends in March, I believe.
I think it does, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got a huge show, so we better move on and get stuck into it. Housing prices, Jack, there's been a little bit of alarmism, I see, but housing prices have declined pretty much in the wake of the budget.
So it would seem it's always a little bit early to call these things. I mean, where we are at the moment is that there's a lot of auctions that aren't proceeding and a lot of properties that are not being sold. It doesn't always give you an accurate picture of what the price is going to be after it all settles down.
The Australian reported on Wednesday that 9 of the 10 top suburbs for the uptake of the 5% deposit scheme, that's for first-time buyers, had all suffered house price drops, fueling concerns that highly leveraged young Australians could be trapped in negative equity. What's negative equity, Jack? You buy a house for $1 million and 6 months later it's worth $950. That's right, isn't it? Something of that order?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, what it means is that you don't actually have any equity in the house, that your debt exceeds the current value of the house if you put it on the market. This happens from time to time. I can remember in the early 90s in the inner suburbs of Melbourne having a conversation at dinner with a banker who said, really there's no real market in inner suburban terraces at the moment because we effectively, and the banks, have all the equity in a lot of them, but we won't be putting them on the market because that would kill the market, right? And that's what will happen in this situation.
An opportunity loss for a lot of people when you can't buy around there for under $2.5 million now. Look, that's what happens in very serious cases like the global financial crisis, for example. I mean, Ireland, for example, if you bought a house that cost you €500,000, the property bubble burst and that place might be worth 250. Then that would lead to a foreclosure, wouldn't it?
In that situation, the bank's got to put it on the market because there's no way knowing they're going to get the money. And that certainly happened in the US in the 2008 financial crisis.
It did.
In most markets within the US, that's true. Properties were just sold up. And like Australia, they had various schemes for allowing people to get into the property market with very little deposit. And, of course, they are always the first people to suffer when equity drops.
Well, it was a little bit crazier than a 5% deposit, wasn't it? It was the old ninja loans. People without work, without income were given loans to buy houses. But that was then, and this is now. Treasury is forecasting a 2% increase in house prices across Australia, across the country. And that's nowhere near where prices have been in the immediate past. I mean, most people would like to think that they add about 10% of equity into their homes every year, just on the basis of a rising price. But you know, the issue is the things just can't keep rising in Sydney and Melbourne in particular. Can't keep rising at that rate is what I mean. You know, we talked about the pandemic and how that shifted prices by 25% across the board in the country and in some places like mine a bit higher. you're just sort of keeping people out of the marketplace that way.
Well, that's it in a sense. You can't complain about young people not being able to buy houses and complain that the wealth that you have tied up in your house is not going up fast enough. Those two things don't fit.
No, they don't. Not ethically anyway. And you know, if you invested in anything else other than housing in the last 25 or 30 years, it'd be, you know, you're going to get better results than the equities markets, for example. But those days may be over.
In a sense, that's the root cause of the problem with housing affordability, is that the tax system, amongst other things in Australia, makes putting your money into your own house easily the most beneficial investment you're going to make. And that's caused the rise in house prices, which makes it harder for young people to buy a house.
Yeah, exactly.
If you evened that out and made investment in other things, commercial property, equities, et cetera, as attractive as putting your money into your own home is, we wouldn't have quite this problem.
Yeah, so, I mean, certainly CBD, commercial property market, I would be loath to invest in at the moment for obvious reasons, Jack. The work from home issues, leaving the cities not bare, but not as many people in them as one might expect. And they keep building the space, of course, so there's plenty of it and not a lot of people want it. But the equities markets, Jack, it sort of interests me that a lot of money that had been stored up in housing investments, negative geared and so forth, may have to head to the securities markets, into the ASX.
Yes.
I think that's one consequence. We'll see more money going into the Australian Stock Exchange than ever before.
That's not a bad thing, by the way.
No, it's a good thing. It's actually a good thing. But let's have a look at this 5% deposit scheme that the Albanese government implemented. 5% down on the housing price will get you there. There are about 50,000 users of the scheme in both Melbourne and Sydney. Is it enough encouragement, Jack?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
is it working?
I don't think it does all that much to fix it. I think it gives a little bit of incentive to young people to get on the property ladder, and that's not a bad thing. But is it some magic potion? No, it's not.
Yeah. But I mean, we are, I think, going to see a bit of a shift in home ownership. But it won't be seen really substantially for a year or two. You won't start seeing some data that would support a greater uptake of first home buyers in our major cities. 5% down on $1 million on $1 million property is 50 large. But at the same time, Jack, and that means you're going to borrow $950. At the same time, Jack, it would seem that lending is a bit more difficult, or for people to get money from the banks and from mortgage lenders is becoming more and more difficult, Jack. Why would that be?
I don't really have a picture on that, to be quite honest.
I think.
I mean, they essentially weigh risk is what they do. So
yeah, and there may be a sense that a first home buyer stumping up 50,000, borrowing $950, that house might be worth, in let's say 5 years' time, that house might be worth 1.1. And you're sort of leaning into that negative equity situation, and I think that might have some effect on lending at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, this bloke back in the early 90s, the banks had no intention of putting all of those properties on the market because they would have got not much for them, but they were relying on the fact that there would be a bounce back. And there was, and the bank's situation improves dramatically. If the bank thinks, well, it's going to flatten out but not improve much, we're still going to have a lot of people who have. They might not have negative equity, but they'll have very little equity in the property.
Very little, yeah.
And that's a risk factor for us.
All right, moving on. We'll keep an eye on housing and whether the government's shifts in policy, lies some might call them, is going to have any sort of beneficial impact on first home buyers.
I've got to say, I don't get the whole lie thing about that. They changed their mind.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I'm just saying what some people are saying. The Dave Hughes arguments, Jack, which we probably shouldn't spend too much time on. The One Nation surge. We said we'd talk about it here, Jack, and you've got a pretty detailed timeline post federal election. One Nation polled around 6.5%. They've got 6 to 6.5%. Nationally in the election last year in May, and here we are, sort of 14 months later, and they're up in the 20s. Some might even argue the 30s. There are a couple of things there that you haven't put in that I do want to talk about. But we'll keep going. Just there seems to be some sort of link between Bondi, the terrorist attack on Bondi on December 12 last year, and the rise of One Nation. And certainly we start seeing that graph rise at the latter part of the year. But there's one thing that did happen, and various people have pointed this out, that Hanson went to Mar-a-Lago with Gina Reinhardt. She was there for the ball on October 31, the Halloween ball, and she was there for a couple of days afterwards. And that does we need to talk about this because there is some stuff. If you spend a lot of time on social media looking at these things, you'll find that there's a lot of overseas influence in social media. A good example I can probably give our listeners is that Natalie Barr, the presenter of Sunrise on Channel 7, there was a series of AI-type videos with Natalie Barr grilling Anthony Albanese, saying that she thought that LGBTQI issues were of no consequence, all this sort of stuff. Natalie Barr didn't say those things. It was, as I say, AI-generated video. There was sort of suggestions in there that Barr had called Anthony Albanese a crook. It's credible enough when you look at it, but it's all once you have a deeper look, it's all generated overseas. Another post I can think of came from TikTok, Instagram. And that was suggesting that the Labor Party or the senior figures in the Labor Party, Chalmers, Albanese, etc., had put their houses on the markets after the budget had come through. Now, it's all nonsense. I mean, Albo had a investment property, I think, in Marrickville that he had to get rid of in order to buy his home. We thought it was a pretty poorly timed announcement in his first term because housing was a major issue then. So we know that house was sold before Elbow stumped up for the one on the Central Coast. So a lot of this stuff seems to be generating attacks on the government, attacks on the coalition, and then we look at her meeting in Mar-a-Lago. Not that she'd be sitting down. I'm not suggesting for a moment she sits down with Donald Trump. As far as I know, she never met Donald Trump. But there will be operatives within Mar-a-Lago who can say to Pauline Hanson, we can get you rolling here. And we can get you rolling here with social media posts that are essentially bots, Facebook bots, Instagram bots, etc., etc. And I think we need to sort of see this as part of this kind of, I described it in my column today as the mirage of One Nation. There is a mirage there The only reality we've seen is a by-election in Farrer and a South Australian state election, which gave them 4 members in the lower house, and that was really at the peak, I would think, of this sort of. A lot of public relations around One Nation. So there are some things there that people would be looking at that just clearly aren't real. Now, they're not One Nation branded. It is political advertising. And to suggest that One Nation are responsible for it, well, I don't know. But I'm seeing a hell of a lot of this kind of activity. And it is compelling. We've seen it in the US presidential election. We've seen it in UK and European elections. We saw as the former president of Hungary was frog marched out the door by the people, that he was deeply engaged in a lot of this sort of misinformation and disinfo, bot farming stuff that comes from there. Jack, you across all this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'm aware that it happens, yeah.
Yeah. And so when we look at the timing of this, it coincides very closely with the rise of One Nation. Now, there are other factors at play. I'm not suggesting this is just the one sole reason for One Nation's rise. There are other issues, frustration around the major parties, etc. But this sort of advertising, bot-like advertising, scurrilous sort of stuff that suggests that the government's corrupt and the uniparty system, Jack. You're hearing a lot of this sort of stuff, this sort of rhetoric. We'll get to a quote along those lines fairly soon. So that was the start of it. That was the start of the One Nation branding exercise, and not a branding exercise. It was not branded.
When was that? Halloween last year.
Yeah, Halloween. You met them then, and then we start seeing over the Christmas break, particularly after Bondi. So these things start floating up. There was a lot of agitation around Bondi. Whether Bondi had an impact on polling or not, I can't say, other than to suggest it would not be a sustainable. Expression of voting determination going forward. So there's a lot there that's not really quite real about the One Nation rise, Jack. And I just sort of think, I've said this before. I think Victoria will be a standout for a number of reasons because you've got particular factors at work. But where you've got relatively stable governments in, let's say, New South Wales and federally, I think these things will start falling flat. The other lesson about all of this is that the higher you go in polling, the more scrutiny you will face.
Yes. I don't know where the One Nation thing's going to end up. I will say this, that I think, and there are some mirage aspects to it, but I also think it's real enough. This is the biggest political disruption since World War II in Australia. This is bigger than the DLP. This is bigger than the Australian Democrats. This is bigger than the Greens. None of them ever pulled anything higher than a 12% vote ever. The DLP and the Democrats never returned a single House of Reps member. The Greens did 3 in the end. There's already 2 One Nation people, and they're polling not at 12%, not at 13%, but they're polling well into the 20s. Now, even if we factor in some mirage factor, if they're polling 20, that still makes them easily the biggest disruption to the Australian political scene since World War II.
But this is the point. I mean, they're not taking. I mean, you've got some polling in there, and again, it's not really sourced. But we saw a news poll released on Monday, which had which had One Nation down a couple of points, Labor up 3. But Labor were up 3 to 33, and so they got 34.56 in the election in May. So they're not far away from that. They're well within the margin of error of Newspoll to repeat what they got then. Where it's impacting is in the right wing vote. It's a splintering of that vote. With really very, very little crossover onto the left. So it really comes down to the Liberal Party right now to say, all right, let's say we've got 18. There is 15% of the primary vote at least up for grabs that we need to get in order to be competitive at the next federal election. And that's even relying on sort of One Nation preferences and what have you, however they will fold out. And that's what they've got to look at. 15 to 20% that we need. How do we go about doing that? Well, people probably aren't listening at the moment. So maybe we should just get our heads down and work on some policy. The Albanese government has given us plenty of motivation, and we need to sit down and come up with some policies. And I think that's where it is. Otherwise, what you'll see is just a right-wing vote fragment in this country, and they will not. They will just basically, like the DLs did to Labor, just keep right-wing or conservative parties out of government in Australia. That's the impact. There's no crossover that we can see. We're just not seeing it. You know, even in some of the polls that had One Nation in front, Labor was still around 29, again, more or less within their margin of error of where they were last year.
I'm not quite as confident that we can see how that's going to end up as you are. But you're right about this. You're certainly right about that. The job for the Liberal Party is take your eyes off the polls. Head down, backside up, do the hard yards, and don't go chasing the media cycle too hard. Just do the good, solid policy work. Go and do personal appearances, shake lots of hands, do the basic things of politics, get them right.
A lot of electoral work. But also, Jack, it's they have to attack One Nation at some point. They don't have to do it now, but they have to attack One Nation. They have to say if you're a conservative, if your politics stands on the right, you can vote for us or you can vote for them. And if you vote for them, this is what you're going to get. You know, and see how they get on. You know, I mean, if they sort of try and glad hand One Nation around, then that 15 to 20% of primary vote that's up for grabs, they won't get them.
You've got to respect the people who are presently voting or intending to vote for One Nation. You've got to treat them with a great deal of respect. But in the end, you can say, if you vote for One Nation, you're going to get a Labor government.
You're going to get a Labor government, but even in
that's probably
One Nation's
likely.
wildest dreams, what you're going to get is a lot of uncertainty, and people hate uncertainty. You know, there's no real certainty about Hanson. She's all over the shop. You know, I cited the example of the maternity leave scheme in Australia, which is government funded, and when she was asked about it, she thought it was all provided by business, by private enterprise. You know, she's nowhere near lazy, a lazy politician. We know this from her appearances in the Senate. She's got one of the worst attendances on record, doesn't turn up to Senate committee hearings, basically pretty lazy sort of person. Perhaps we can say that, but that they can't. But they can sort of hint at this sort of uncertainty, this the policy framework that seems to shift on a daily basis. And these are things that I think more broadly Australians are going to pick up on. as they go. That there's a little bit of a sense that they're being conned, and that will become clearer and clearer. But the Libs have to attack One Nation. They just have to, and otherwise, the end for them will come pretty swiftly. It won't for Labor. Labor's likely to have its majority more or less restored at the next election. The way this polling is at the moment, we're talking about 54-46. That's where we were last time. So, there's this war going on in the Liberal Party at the moment, and the Victorian Libs seem to have dealt with some of their problems fairly well, but federally they seem just completely paralysed, and they're being given directives by the federal president of the Liberal Party, who should have zero input into electoral matters. Allowing him to say, well, we're going to kid glove One Nation. We're going to try and slip in there and I don't know. The objective is that we will become the junior member of a One Nation coalition. It doesn't make any sense. And it wouldn't be the first time Tony Abbott's been hellishly wrong about the Australian people, and I just think he's bad. And I mention the Victorian stuff because, of course, you've got the upper house member there, Jack, who's likely to be disendorsed, Deeming, who's been nothing but trouble for that party. But I think last Jess Wilson. In Jess Wilson, they've got a leader who's going to stand up to her, follow processes, and get rid of her. And the next thing, of course, is Moira Deem is going to probably have a sniff around another party. It may well be One Nation, but at least they've handled this well. Can we very briefly talk about the Matthew Guy allegation, Jack? Because it's just bizarre.
I couldn't quite work out what was going on with that, I must say. Maybe it wasn't reported.
There's CCTV footage. So she claimed after this Liberal Party function in Sunshine, you wouldn't reckon they get too many there, but we see the CCTV. She claimed that Matthew Guy put her in a headlock, and she was encouraged by Jess Wilson to go and report that to police, which is just the right thing to do. And then, of course, CCTV footage emerged where he had perhaps indelicately, but not in any confrontational way, put his hand on her shoulder or the back of her neck while he leaned in to talk to her, and she scuttled off to go to the Tory conference in the UK with Tony Abbott and so forth. But apparently, that little block are no longer supporting her. Because, again, the Libs, and we're going to get to Victoria in a minute, where One Nation are polling pretty well. I think they're on top of the polling at the moment in Victoria. Now, the Libs should win that election, but if you've got people like Moira Deeming running around, running some awful vendetta, then they're just and it not being handled well by the party. She sued John Pizzato. She sought to bankrupt Pizzato to the point where he would have to leave the party. That should have been enough for her, surely. Who behaves like that within a political party, Jack?
Well, there's no shortage of them, unfortunately.
Oh, no, there's plenty of shortage. There aren't people who are that reckless with their party's fortunes. They just aren't. Making police reports, these sorts of things. We could point to one or two examples, but how you deal with those people has been confounded the Victorian Liberals for a long time. But I think in Jess Wilson, she's at least seen to be doing the right thing about the allegation in the first place. She's allowed Deeming to make her claims. She's interviewed Deeming herself, or what member of her staff has, and then she'll go away, and it won't be her call. She'll leave it to she'll leave it to the Liberal Party Council in Victoria to decide whether Moira deeming is disendorsed or not. And I think she's got that absolutely right this time, and deeming needs to go. So I think things are looking up for the Victorian Libs, but there is this sense of neither one nor the other in Victoria. So I think we're going to get some fairly unusual sort of results there. So I'm just scrolling now. Don Farrell's had a bit to say about One Nation, Jack. Now, Don Farrell, for our listeners, he's the right faction convener, pretty much for the caucus, isn't he? And considered a power broker. He is Special Minister of State, is he? No, I don't think that's right.
I believe so. Yeah.
Certainly a cabinet member, but he carries a lot of numbers around.
Minister
his
for
pocket.
Trade as well, I think.
He is definitely Minister for Trade. That's what I was thinking. Yes. What's he saying about the rise of Hanson?
He puts it down to, as you do, to the division in the coalition. But he thought the real surge happened post the Bondi massacre.
Yeah, and look, I don't know that we completely understand the full social impact of Bondi on our communities. You might think that it was kind of localised around Sydney's eastern suburbs, or it might have had a broader impact across the nation. We're not sure, but again, it would seem to me to be a very temporary sort of blip, one way or another, and not really come down to voting determinants when people actually walk into a ballot booth or a polling booth and mark their ballots. I just don't think that's going to be a voting determinant one way or another. Perhaps worth remembering too that One Nation, among others, including the Greens, voted down the bans on hate preachers, Jack. They said they did it for other reasons, but they haven't got around to naming what those are. But they've been running around in the wake of Bondi saying we got to get rid of all these hate preachers. We got to get rid of all these hate preachers. Then when they had a chance to vote on it, doing just that, they squibbed it.
Yeah, but like I say, even if you put a mirage factor in there, there's still 20% of the vote, at least.
Yeah, but it's just polls, right? So what we did see in South Australia is 20%. So that you can lock in, right? And that I think was round about the peak.
And don't forget, that's bigger than the Democrats, bigger than the DLP, bigger than the Greens.
Yeah. Look, I'm not disputing it. I'm just saying I'm not sure how sustainable it is going forward. But this is something we'll have to see. As I say, when we get to Newspoll, and there was a sense, and I spoke to the people at Newspoll during the week, and I spoke to a number of people at the Australian as well. I surmised that One Nation has reached its high water mark. And there was some murmurings around that too. Of course, we don't know. We'll have to watch polling going forward. But in that poll, which was a little bit of a boost for Anthony Albanese, he saw his fortunes rise as his approval ratings rise quite significantly. He is the preferred Prime Minister by some distance, and Angus Taylor is number 2 with Hanson third. So that's pretty much predictable as it is. But I see the benchline figure here's primary vote, Labor 33 plus 3, Fon 29 down 2, Coalition 17 minus 1. So the coalitions are they're the party with the job to do. And Fon, well, you know, they've got to grab Fon's vote. They've got to halve that, in my opinion. And when I talk to people just out of politics, who are just, you know, people talking about where their political affiliations are, and I speak to a lot of people from the Liberal Party, there has been, they've gone with the One Nation thing. But as soon as you mention, gee, you know what's going to happen. You're just going to splinter the vote, and you're going to drive Elbow return him into power. And they go, oh, really? Do you think so? And it's a very powerful thing, I reckon. And the Libs need to do a little bit more of it. Greens vote was up by 2, and they've been languishing a little bit. They really did have a shocking year. They had a terrible election. Lost 3 House of Reps seats, gained 1, and lost a senator. And things, I think, it's time for them to stand up and say what they stick to. I mean, I'll go a little bit further than that. It's time they stood up and became a genuine environmental party again. Because they're just not there at the moment. But with Labor 33, Greens 14, it gets you so close to 50 anyway, doesn't it? And of course the One Nation preferences, Jack. Well, in the past, what's happened with One Nation preferences is they go about 75-25, so 75 to the coalition, 25 to Labor. So there's always going to be that sort of vote loss, this vote hemorrhaging under the preferential system.
So we don't know what they would have done in Farrell, because of course they weren't distributed because he won. But that's the history of it. But
there were people. I was talking to a member of the Liberal Party who said that while there were preferences allocated by One Nation, she was a scrutineer in Farrer, and she said that very few people followed the One Nation recommendation. She said less than half. Now, I'm not quite sure. She knows more about it. She saw the ballots counted, and I didn't. But that would be a bit alarming too for the Liberals if they can't get that 15% halve One Nation's vote and have it all come to them. They're going to rely heavily on preferences, and if preferences aren't flowing at least 75-25, well, it's got to be 85-15 really, then they're going to be in all sorts of trouble, and they're going to lose those remaining strongholds that they have in city electorates in Brisbane and Perth. Nothing in South Australia, of course. There's just a couple on the outer eastern fringes of Melbourne now. So, I mean, look, we're either watching the demise of the Liberal Party or a bit of a mirage around the One Nation. It's one thing or the other. It can't be both. But that's where it's landing. All right, moving on. Let's go with Jacinta Allen, Jack in Victoria. We've been referring to her a bit. She's had some awkward moments dealing with the Age's investigative unit, which includes Nick McKenzie, of course, on the big build projects, Jack. About 20-25% loaded in.
I don't know whether you saw her yesterday standing on the steps of Parliament House, and the lights went green, and she tried to dash across towards the Imperial. And it didn't work. And then she had to scurry back, talk to him a couple of more minutes, and then she went back up the steps and back into Parliament House. Always a terrible look when a leader
is running away.
Is running away from the press.
Yeah, I mean, it really does look like doom. And I think we're going to see some really strange results in the Victorian election because there is one, you've got this factor of a government that has to go, needs to go. And then you've got perhaps a lot of uncertainty about the Liberal Party themselves, who seem to be better managed. They certainly under Jess Wilson have avoided a lot of the pitfalls that people like Matthew Guy walk straight into. But let's get back to Jacinta Allen and the and the big build projects, Jack, which have been loaded up to the tune of about 25% just on sheer corruption.
Yes.
Have you seen this? Did you see the 60 Minutes interviews?
I did, and I saw Nick McKenzie saying that he had sort of credible evidence that it came from Jacinta Allen's office. That other contractors, John Hollands was one of them, were asked the question, can you do a deal with the union? Because if you can't do a deal with the union, which means to our satisfaction, then you won't get the job. And that's awfully improper behaviour for a Premier's office if he's right. If Nick McKenzie is right,
he's very rarely wrong, Jack.
And I'm trying to be fair to.
No, I know what you're saying, but
to Miss Ellen as well.
I'm just saying that Nick would not would not ask that question or make that statement unless there was some substance behind it.
Yes, every time I see the Premier now on the television, it looks worse and worse and worse. I actually think her position is terminal,
one way or another it is. One way or another it will be. I don't think there'd be any...
They may not have the courage to replace her, but
if they don't, they'll
lose.
Who'd take it on?
Well, you get to say you're a Premier even if it was only for 6 minutes.
You get an entry in who's who, but you also cop a lot of humiliation and flack over it. It's really just a sort of kamikaze style job, and that's why I don't think anyone will put their hand up for it. And there is a sort of sense that you got us into this mess. You and your predecessor largely. The issue with their predecessor, Andrews is a good politician. She's not. He was a clever guy. He was a good communicator. People can say that he made plenty of mistakes and they'd be well within their rights to say that. But he was always a good communicator. We talked about that sort of narrative that the good politicians come up with. This is where we are. This is where we want to be. This is how we get there. And he was very, very good at that, particularly in his first. In fact, I think he's the only state premier, certainly in living memory, Jack, that's and this would include the feds too, of course, that won 3 elections and increased his parliamentary majority each time.
It's very unusual. I can't recall one anyway.
I did do the exercise and went back to some of the Balti days, but no.
I know Cos Samara still thinks there is a pathway to victory for Jacinta Allen and the party, but I just can't see it. I think she's so on the nose now, they will vote for anybody else.
I agree. There is a pathway. I would agree with Cos on that. But speaking to a lot of Victorians, some who are not especially political, there's just a sort of fury about the government at the moment that, you just know that when, you feel that from this sort of every man and woman sort of exercise that they are desperate to get rid of this government. And that will lead to some fairly strange voting behaviour. But there still is the pathway, and that is that the right-wing vote, as we discussed with the feds, sort of basically just cannibalises itself.
The problem with that is that even when I've been speaking to Labor people, I wouldn't be absolutely sure that many of them would actually vote for the return of a Jacinta Allen government, I've got to say. But they aren't going to come out...
ballot, mate, in the old blank ballot in the box.
They aren't going to come out and say that publicly, but if I saw them walking into the polling booth, I wouldn't be ticking their name off and saying, well, that's definitely a Labor vote, right? Because the level of disgust is very high indeed. Right?
And this would just seem, the timing of this, I'm not suggesting Nick's done anything that would, that drags this into, the pointy end of the electoral cycle in Victoria. But the timing of it, nevertheless, is pretty awful for her. She has denied the claims, stating there is no evidence to back it up.
More precisely, she says, if you've got any evidence, give it to the police.
Give it to the police. If
she doesn't say there's no evidence. She says,
don't tell it to me, because it's only going to be awkward. It's only going to make me look terrible.
Can I just say my favourite comment on all this was on X the other day, after the Nick McKenzie piece appeared in The Age, and it went like this. You do know that this shit rag, which is The Age, is just another official One Nation Liberal National Party Uni-Party official media outlet. And I've been reading The Age for a long time, and that was a surprise to me. Please don't believe everything you read in it. Plus, it's paywall, which that made me giggle. This is really terrible.
I hate this newspaper, but I'm paying.
I actually read it differently. I hate what they're saying in The Age, but I don't know what it is because it's paywall. And I can't.
That could be true too.
So if that's
we might have found a Labor voter, Jack.
Yeah, but if that's what you've got left, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Might have found a Labor voter in Victoria there. That's the other thing. So there's still a few around. Yeah. Ferg, my good mate John Ferguson in the Australian in Victoria, in Melbourne, he's summoned up the ghost of Joh Bjelke-Petersen.
He did
over sort of the corrupt thing. It was the end that it was the corruption just brought him down. Was
this because Australian readers are the only readers in the country who still know who Joh Bjelke-Petersen was?
It's probably true. And I was just going to tell the story of Russ Hinds going knocking on the Premier's door. Come out, Joe. It's all over, mate. It's all over. They got us. We're bugging, but Joe refused to come out. They had to pretty much, get the jaws of life to get his door open and get him out. But yes, that was all a long time ago. But Ferg too is suggesting that there is a pathway for a Labor re-election. It does exist. I just don't think it's going to exist. Ferg would have a better grip on how Melburnians are thinking, how Victorians are thinking. He's a country boy, of course. So. There is a pathway there, but it seems distinctly unlikely. If you were going to look for a result, it would be, the Libs holding a large number of seats, and I think One Nation will take a few off Labor, perhaps in some of those working class areas too, because that's where a lot of the dissatisfaction lies. It's not the same as, just in case you think that's inconsistent what I was saying before, it's not the same federally. This is a government in Victoria that is at the fag end of its life. And when it gets to that point, there's really nothing that can save them.
And as happens with Victorian Labor governments who get to this point, it's because they've become a creature of the union movement. Yeah.
And look, it's quite bad with the build big, or the big build in Victoria. Some of these major projects heavily over budget, largely because you're going to pay for people like Mick Gatto. All the government money's not paying Mick Gatto, but union money is paying Mick Gatto, and developer money is paying Mick Gatto, so he can, do whatever he does to ensure compliance. Yeah, I still think, Jack, going back to the building industry Royal Commission we had, there was just so many things that were missed there, and the greatest one was, heck, Mick Gatto didn't get called in to give evidence under oath. Anyway. Ferg says, arguably Allen's biggest fault has been to govern with scant regard for fiscal responsibility, matched by a relentless indifference to the plight of most of the state. Allen's radar has always been about Labor and unions, and with a primary vote in the 20s, that leaves out a lot of interested people grappling to be heard or at least represented. We talked about this, Jack. Starting pay for teachers in Victoria, lowest in the country. So she's beholden to some unions, but not to others.
Not the others, yes.
Yeah. All right. And as we said, Cos has said that there is a pathway. I don't think Cos believes it, but he's right to identify that it is there. Over now to the UK, Jack, and Andy Burnham, the Messiah in waiting, has released his program. Before I ask you some questions on what that is, it would seem the decks have been cleared, so he will become Prime Minister within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, within weeks, yes. Yeah, there will be no other candidate.
So what's the program, Jack? Going to have to be a good one.
I'm not sure exactly. Oh, you mean his program?
Yes.
It's not bad in the sense that he had to get up there and say something positive, and he did. But there wasn't any real detail.
No.
The things that he seemed to think were important, that he's going to have a kind of a number 10 Downing Street North up in Manchester, and that he will spend a lot of time up there, and he will in part govern from up there. That is a little bit impractical, but we'll just have to see how that goes.
But this is more about his sort of dissolution. Well, that's not the right word.
Devolution.
That's right. Devolution of government. So it's not necessarily London-based. There'll be regional sort of regional HQs around the country.
Yes, he wants to devolve more power to the regions within the
councils. He's talking about some of the big
councils.
reforms to the councils.
They've already devolved a great deal of power to Scotland and Wales, for instance, but he wants to devolve further power in England. I would say about that devolution has not been a success for either Scotland or Wales. Economically, socially, or in any other way that I can see.
Scotland's sort of economically outperforms the UK. So not the UK, England. I know Wales is in fairly desperate straits. Scotland does a little better than the UK. Well, sorry, I keep saying that. England, Scotland does a little better than that in terms of economic growth and what have you.
It depends upon how you measure it and how you measure the contributions of various parties. I don't think it does, but that's my view, and I can certainly see that other people have a different view. But devolution has not been good, in my view, for either Scotland or Wales, and there's no reason why further devolution would be any better. The devolution and the changes to the constitutional relationships in the UK were the great ticking time bombs that Tony Blair left behind that didn't work out well at all, in my view. So that's what he's keen on that. He says he's keen on good growth. He wants hope in every heart and growth in every postcode, but there's nothing else in his plans that explains how he thinks growth will occur. And he's big on collaborative politics and the circuit breaker. All those things are good things to say at the start of a prime ministership,
Not a lot of detail. And meanwhile, Jack, Sir Keir Starmer has released, what is it, a $20 billion boost in military spending? Have you had a good look at that? I mean, is it...
It doesn't add up at all.
Right. Now, I was going to ask whether it was backloaded or what, where all the spending occurs 4, 5, 6 years down the track.
It's the usual smoke and mirrors. He's counting things 3 times and, and hey, look over there while I just shift this bit around here. Right. And,
Because he lost this, that was sort of not perhaps the beginning of the end, but nearly the end of the end was when he lost his defence secretary.
Yeah, who is pretty good actually.
Yeah,
He's pretty competent, right?
Is Burnham likely to keep him?
That's all too early to say. One thing that shifted a little bit in politics is that the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has been ruling Prime Minister's questions. She has had Starmer absolutely on the ropes, right? He has been clueless as to how to deal with her, and she's grown up in the job, and she's sassy and bright and quite funny. Always a dangerous combination, but she might find Burnham a bit more of a handful to deal with in that way. She was getting stuck into Starmer again the other day, saying, "Look, for all that you've caved into the backbench of the party, they've burnt you and gotten rid of you." She said, "And what for? A pair of eyelashes and a black T-shirt," right? Which is Andrew Burnham, right? Who's a not bad-looking fella, and he's fond of wearing the black T-shirt. And Burnham's social media response was to post a little video of him without his usual glasses, looking down at his T-shirt, giving the eyelashes a good flutter and saying, "It's actually dark blue."
Dark blue T-shirt, Jack.
Yeah,
your fashion tip for you.
Yeah, but I just thought, well, that's an indication, Mrs. Badenoch, that you're going to find that a little bit tougher.
Harder.
Yeah.
Going to be a bit harder. He is very, very quick on his feet.
Yes, that's right. And
quick with
Starmer is not.
No.
I mean,
Starmer's
belting
studied, and you can just see the cogs rolling around while he's thinking about his next word. It's ponderous. Some people are just born to politics, and Burnham is one of them.
Yeah, and Starmer was a very easy target for her in Prime Minister's questions. Burnham probably won't be.
Alrighty, very, very quickly, Jack. One day it will come to us all. Jack, are we going to die? Are we going to pass away?
This is a pet peeve of mine. It's probably my Catholic upbringing. All those funerals I went to as an altar boy. It's become a real thing now to say people pass over and pass away, or whatever they do,
or just passed, which is a very American expression.
Yeah. Well, I'm older than you, and I'll go first. But I got to tell you, I will die. And if I hear you start talking and telling people that I've passed, I'll be back to haunt you.
He's passed. I do get a little bit annoyed when I hear that. Yes, he passed some years ago. So it's not passed away, which is I don't mind that expression. He passed, like he was sitting for an exam. He passed 18 months ago, and it's a real Americanism. We're already pretty awful, as you say, discussing things about mortality and death, and so using these little euphemisms, it really doesn't help explain what people are going through. It doesn't assist with the grieving.
No, it doesn't.
Passed. Over to the States. The book Jonathan Swan. Have you read it, Jack? Or
no, I haven't. I haven't I haven't been able to pick up a copy yet. There is a very good interview on C-SPAN. It's I can't remember the name.
Certainly doing a lot of publicity on it.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of
I did Jon Stewart. I bought the ebook, and look, I've been dipping and diving. Let's say halfway through, it's probably a third.
Yeah. The interview on C-SPAN is terrific. It's both of them there with the guy from C-SPAN, and it's a really good interview.
Yeah. She's smart. I mean, she's really smart.
They're both smart.
Yeah, so's Jonathan Swan. Plus, he's done some local media. I think he was doing something for the 9 Media or 60 Minutes. I think he's on 60 Minutes.
Oh, has he? Local media in Oz?
Yeah. I think he's on 60 Minutes this weekend.
Because he's with New York Times. They're both at New York Times.
I think you pulled me up. I thought he was still at Axios, but he moved to New York Times about 12 months ago, maybe 18 months ago now. So they're very bright. Look, one of the things I did see, and this is pre-war with Iran, and there's probably half a dozen of the J-Synth stuff, which is the big decision makers. So I'm not sure that Vance is there from memory. It was Trump. It was the head of the CIA. It was Hegseth. It was Rubio. It was, I think, Trump's chief of staff. And they were saying, Rubio made the point that, his department had looked at this and he didn't think there was a way that regime change could be forced by the airstrikes and missiles and so forth that were headed Iran's way. The CIA went away and did some analysis and came back to the Situation Room the following day and said, look, we've looked at this every which way and there's just no way that you'll get regime change. So, and then Trump piped up and says, well, I've got a gut feel about this. So they went with his gut, which just doesn't seem like a very sensible way to do things. It's rejecting all the advice you've received, much of it well considered, and going with his gut. And this is what Swan and Haberman have been saying about the way the president operates, or his executive operates now. They'll get together all the bits and bobs that they need to do, but if Trump's got a gut feel on something, they just go with that.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's going to end badly soon enough, right? And it ended badly with the Iran war. And then, oh God, it was only a couple of weeks in, wasn't it, Jack, when he started talking about how Rubio and Hegseth and Vance had sort of, they were the ones that suggested all of this all along. So he sort of was already sort of hanging them out to dry based on his hunches.
My recollection is that he left Rubio off that list. That he gave Rubio. I thought that was notable.
Kushner was in the mix as well, and they were the ones who told me. He said, and I'm sure Rubio was one of them.
No. I kept a close eye on that. He didn't hang Rubio out to dry at all.
Yeah, well, that's it doesn't matter, but that was my memory of it, and it wasn't Vance; it was Hegseth. He clearly doesn't like Hegseth, yes, it's just an appalling way to run things, where you just go on. I mean, it's the sort of stuff you'd expect to see in Western African dictatorship sort of thing. We've got all the information here. What do we do next? Well, ignore all that because I got a feeling.
Maggie Haberman said that she thought it was it had its genesis in his understanding of how, say, Democrat machine politicians operate in places like New York City or Philadelphia or whatever, and that he was familiar with that. He was familiar with that because he'd grown up with it.
And that may be the case, but you don't go to war on that basis, surely, Anyway, well worth a read. Regime Change by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. I'm getting stuck into it a little bit more tonight. There's some great stuff there. And this is the other one, Jack. He said, I'm the most powerful man in the world. Not just that, I might be one of the most powerful men ever in the world. And then he runs off a list. Hitler, Stalin, I don't think he mentioned Genghis Khan, but he belongs there too. But all these monsters, and so was happy enough to include himself on the list. I don't know. I think we're seeing the marbles fall out there. All right. Let's have a look at this, Jack, because I don't know anything about it. AI just exposed the biggest legal insider trading operation in America. tell us about this. A platform called GovGreed built a 7-layer machine learning system that cross-references every stock trade disclosed by every sitting politician against the bills their committees control. And this is what they came up with, Jack. You can run us through the figures.
I've kind of lost track of them.
Okay, 56% of every stock purchase made by Congress in the last 16 months was on a stock directly affected by a bill the buyer later voted on. This is 56%, more than half.
Yeah, the AI thing is just a
way of detecting trade.
Just a way of detecting stuff, of cross-referencing people's participation on committees and what bills the committees are considering, and then connecting that with the trades that are made in their name and are declared in accordance with the congressional.
Yes, I mean, look, I should apologise. This is actually our sort of one-off sort of topic for today. We're going to have to deal with it fairly briefly, but what we have seen, and it's been known for years, this is not a Trump phenomenon, is that congressmen
it's not a party
and
political
women,
thing.
It's bipartisan greed, and it allows congressmen and women to trade in stock, regardless of whether they have a clash or a conflict of interest. They're still allowed to trade, and we've seen this. Marjorie Taylor Greene buying a whole heap of stock before a bill went through that was going to be of benefit to certain companies, and she bought stock in those companies. And she's just an isolated example, but they're all doing it. So
Nancy Pelosi, as you would expect, is the most shrewd amongst them, but then she's pretty shrewd about everything. So.
Yeah, but you say, look, we've got some details here. The salaries for Congress people, members of the House of Representatives and the Senate, they're actually quite small, aren't they, Jack? It's not a big wage.
No.
And
it's 170 grand.
170 Australia, 170 American, I presume. Yeah. So let's say that's about 200 Australian.
I tell you what, Australian senators would be complaining if that's all they were getting.
200, yeah. Well, they're getting 200 plus. I mean, I guess you're getting 200 plus in the US Senate as well. I mean, you wouldn't put your hand in your pocket very often. Cars and flights and all that sort of stuff. But it's not a lot of money. But in Australia, we have fairly tight restrictions on this sort of thing. But in America, not so much. It just leaves it wide open for corruption.
I mean, the standard thing for a US politician, a congressperson who's there for 20 years or a senator who's there for 30, is to finish up with a net worth of, 100 million.
I know. It's just
from a standing start, that is, from nothing, basically. Yeah.
So how do you? Well, I don't think we're going to fix it in this administration because we'll get to Donald Trump in a minute. But there is the Stock Act, is there not, Jack?
There are
passed
restrictions
in 2012 in the Obama administration days. What's the Stock Act supposed to do, Jack?
Oh, I can never work it out. I'm not sure what it's supposed to do. What it does is not much.
But it sought to control that sort of business of elected officials playing on the stock market. But there hasn't been one prosecution in 13 years.
No.
We are talking about corruption in it, and we can put some figures. We can put some figures on it. Yeah, senators and representatives gets $174,000 US a year. The president gets 400,000. Well, he's giving it all back, Jack.
He has.
He's giving it all back. She'd be like pulling teeth getting it out of him too. But he's enriched himself. Well, it depends on who you listen to the tune of billions of dollars, Jack. The latest one is the Kazakhstan mine, where Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. stand to benefit by hundreds of millions of dollars. There's been all the crypto stuff. Just as an indication of just how bad that is, let me just pull this up for you. No, we'll keep going. We'll keep going just a little bit. The president earns 400,000. You're saying it should be 10 million?
No, that's not me saying that. That was an article I read saying that.
It should be 10 million. I wouldn't have thought you'd put a figure on it like that. Senators and representatives being paid $500,000 a year, US. Seems a little strong to me. But I guess the point is, whoever authored this, whoever wrote this, is saying that if you pay people enough, they won't be corrupt. Then you'd have to ask, if that's true, maybe these people are in politics for the wrong reasons in the first place.
Well, no, I think what you need to do, and I don't think the point was well made, what you need to do is to make it possible for them to live comfortably the difficult life they live without being crooked, right? And their current salaries wouldn't even let them do that. You couldn't keep your family back in San Francisco and have a place in DC and do all that on $170,000, even if you're as shrewd as Nancy Pelosi. The Singaporeans do this differently. They have very, very well-paid politicians and senior public servants, but then they are 100% on top of people cheating.
I can't find it right just at the moment, but there was a list of the crypto. There was the Trump crypto. There was the Melania crypto. There was that blowjob woman, that girl. She actually issued her own crypto. And there's a list of, if you invested in this, if you spent $100 on this, this is how much money you'd have now. And it isn't much. If you invested in all these sort of crypto things, while Melania and Donald, etc., have made small fortunes out of it, if you invested $1,000, you'd be lucky to be sitting on $25 now on these crypto things. There's also the business of the Qatar jet, Jack, and all sorts of things. So the president, he's just basically been grabbing with both arms for the last year and a half. He did lose money. In terms of his net worth, how reliable that would be in his first term.
Yes,
but the second term,
I don't know how reliable these figures are, but
they're not necessarily reliable.
That was
but it showed
that
it showed that his net wealth had gone backwards. But he's grabbing with both arms at the moment. So how do you fix it, Jack?
The president's thing, I don't think you can fix very easily, because there isn't the constitutional authority to do much about it.
Or a willingness, Jack.
Willingness. And so far as Congress is concerned, there's demonstrably no willingness to address it.
Well, that's what I meant. There is just, hey, what do you mean? This is kind of, we consider this as salary.
Yes.
Yeah. And look,
I was going to say Ro Khanna, who's I think he's the House leader for the Democrats. I was going to give him a special shout out because I think he's done so well. But a good deal of his money comes because he married well. But he's got so much money that his kids own golf courses in Hawaii. The kids are less than 10. And a couple of his kids have a golf course each in Hawaii and in Ohio, and get a couple of million a year out of the golf course.
Gee whiz. Capital gains tax discount shouldn't be going for them. All right, so moving on, we've got to keep going. Ukraine and Russia. We mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I've been looking at a lot of pro-Ukrainian stuff, it must be said. They blitzed with two enormous strikes, drone strikes in Moscow. About 10 miles from, so about 15K from the Kremlin, and took out the refinery that provides a third of all fuels for drivers to Muscovites. And I don't know if you've seen any footage, Jack, of long queues at service stations in Russia, and quite a lot of biffo. angry scenes, I think you would say. And I don't blame them. I don't like standing in line too. But this must be having an impact on how Russians are seeing the progress of this war.
It's even more clever than that. What they're targeting is parts of refineries, the catalytic breakdown things that break down the oils into its various components, and the Russians can't readily replace those because they can't make their own.
No, it's really highly targeted stuff.
Yes.
We're hearing, and just unconfirmed, but we're hearing that 30% of the troop numbers that were in Donbass, in the disputed territories there, those Russian troops, have left the battlefield. And you've talked. Crimea is not fully cut off. There is one remaining bridge that links Crimea to Russia,
and some shipping.
But of course, we're seeing a sort of mass exodus of, shall we say, Russians or people more disposed to the Russian government, shall we say. A mass exodus, again, long lines of cars trying to get out of Crimea. Now, it must be said, the Ukrainians can never hold Crimea under the current sort of arrangements. They just don't have the military capacity, but they have fought this incredibly clever war. I did see Putin. I don't know where he was when he made these comments, but it's the first live interview I've seen with him, and he just thinks, no, we'll win. We'll keep going, which must be troubling a lot of people, a lot of senior leaders in Russia at the moment. Because they know this is turning very, very badly, very quickly.
This is where you run the risk of what do they call it? A preference cascade, where no one wants to be the first person to move, but once someone does, they will all follow.
Well, there's other things that can happen along the way, Jack, including defenestration, sudden disappearances, plane crashes, etc. In fact, it's got so serious that, I wouldn't be surprised if I woke up one morning and said Vladimir Putin has had a nasty trip and fall and has resigned from the presidency on the account of his sudden death. These sorts of things are very Russian. They had just been outsmarted and outfoxed pretty much at every turn. We just got to go back and think when they invaded Ukraine, we all thought that it was going to be over in 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. And here we are 4 years later with Ukraine with the upper hand. There will be a response, and there have been, to these drone attacks, and Putin has signed off a special acquisition of these hypersonic missiles, which can breach air defences. But the thing that I noticed about this footage, Jack, is that, these Ukrainian drones, they're just sort of buzzing along. They sound like a lawnmower. And Moscow's air defences just firing, firing haphazardly at these things, and didn't get within a bull's roar of them as they just sort of spluttered along in their skies and then took up some pace and went boom. It's astonishing thing. And, I think we actually sort of forget that when this war started, drone warfare was, almost science fiction at the time. And now it's kind of, this is the way wars are fought.
It's every day.
All right. We'll perhaps do a larger examination of all of that. There have been some serious biffo at service stations in Moscow, some very unhappy punters there with queues around the block. So these sorts of things. Well, the other thing is there's an election, in Russia this year, Jack. And the party of which Putin is a member. Well, he's not a member, I should say, but the party he represents, they tend to wear all the flack. So they've got an approval rating, if we believe Russian polls, and we should be pretty sceptical. They've got an approval rating that's sort of negative 30. And Putin sort of stands above that. But in this election, he will be seen as a representative of this party. I think it's Unite Russia is the name of his party. So there's this sense that he'll be really struggling to extract himself from what a lot of Russians are feeling now is extremely painful. We'll move on, if I can, Jack. We'll get back to the Supreme Court stuff next week because there's a fair bit to go through there. But we need to move on to sport. And the big story for mine, outside of the World Cup, which we'll cover, the big story for mine was the retirement of Ben Stokes. I was watching the cricket when the announcement was made. In fact, in the commentary box, the announcement was made a couple of balls beforehand. And then either there was a public service announcement at the ground or some dissemination of this information that Stokes was going to retire, not just as captain, but retire his international career. So there was a really profound sense of sort of expectation. Then Stokes bowled the next over, and there was a sort of hubbub there among the crowd, and he got a wicket first ball of his spell. And New Zealand, we'll talk about how gutsy they were. They, Daryl Mitchell and Rajendra batted magnificently and on a very difficult wicket. They were hit all over the place. The ball would just sort of spring out of nowhere. So hitting the hands, hitting the body, treated throughout their innings. Mitchell got 100. And they just fought it out. But once that Stokes announcement was made, Jack, even in the commentary box, it was like, oh, this is all about Ben Stokes now. When there was a test match to be won or lost or drawn or fought hard over, but instead Stokes opens, plays ridiculous shots from the outset, gets 20 or so. Everyone else comes in and plays recklessly. Joe Root got run out. There were 2 run outs.
Yeah,
and that was
Joe was a bit stiff with the run out.
Harry was, but that was just hellishly good fielding.
Harry Brook, 20 of 9?
Yeah, that was the one that caught my eye.
Yeah.
He just came out and slogged.
Yeah.
There's no other way of looking at it. And then, when he got to 20, he just flipped one off his pads and sent it down to the fine leg boundary, catch completed, see you later. It was I've never seen a side, I've actually never seen that in sport, where the guy retires as your leader. He had a little speech to his mates, and we've probably all seen the video, or most of us had, where he talks about we'll get back into the bat, the backside tapping and the rah-rah stuff after the game. But they didn't. I mean, this was a lap of honour for Ben Stokes while they lost the test in the most sort of reckless way.
At the end of the New Zealand innings, when they declared with 1 wicket in hand, I think the target was 372, less than 4 and over, and you've got Duckett, Bethel, Root, Brook, Smith, Stokes, all can play.
Why change the order? Why change the order? Why change
Why
the
change
order?
the order?
Why open Stokes?
But this is a really difficult chase, but it's not undoable.
I thought it was achievable, and that's why I was completely but it was really that moment when Stokes grabbed the ball in his first spell, took a wicket, and it seemed like from that moment England didn't care who won or lost.
Yeah,
and that seemed to be the mood of the crowd too. And you just think, well,
wasn't the mood of the English fans who were on the text machine to me? I can tell you, they were furious.
It's actually one of the worst things I've seen in sport.
Yeah.
where it just sort of, emphasised the individual rather than the team. Perhaps we should be spending more time on congratulating the Kiwis. It will go down for them as one of their great victories. 1-0 down after the first test, win the next two, battle and bat and bat under very difficult conditions. Mitchell's 100, I watched most of it, Jack, and it was an innings of intense concentration and purpose. Like I say, he was getting hit in the hands, had to stop play probably a dozen times, if not more, to tend to his hands, tend to, blows to the body and things like that. And he just kept on going. He would have been very satisfied with that. Very good, very good.
And a little bit of perspective on that for the captain, the New Zealand captain. That's 5 series wins from 6 goes. He's won away from home in India and England. Fair dinkum, if he was an Australian captain, he'd get an Order of Australia for that, because we can't win in India or in England, right?
It's absolutely right. He's made more hundreds as an opener. I saw this stat. Now, we might not be going back to Sutcliffe and Hobbs, but he's made more runs as an opener in tests than just about anybody in recent history. So more than Dave Warner. I'm just thinking about long-standing openers. More hundreds per innings and those sorts of things. So he's a terrific player on his own. Their keeper is a ripper. He's a real good player. And they've got plenty of bowling options. Satner's a handy enough spinner. England don't have a spinner. They had Shower, but...
Well, he's no good. The New Zealand bowling, look, a lot of it's workmanlike, but they are really well prepared. They catch and field superbly well. They bat with a bit of intent. They're not the most talented side around, but by gee, they're going to be well prepared and they're going to give you a fight.
Well, they're out here, of course, this summer, and they will give as good as they got. They probably play. I mean, there's a theory that they play a bit harder against Australia, but I don't know that that's the case. I just think they turn up every time.
Yeah.
And if you're not at your best, they'll beat you. I think it was Cook, the former Alistair Cook. I think it's Sir Alistair Cook now, who was talking about. He said you could hear it on the stump mics. You could hear the New Zealanders laughing at us.
Yeah,
as if to say, "What are you guys doing?"
Well, no, there's that video is available. You can as they're going through the England batting, they're giggling to themselves. So these blokes are nuts.
Just couldn't figure it out. Yeah, quite astonishing. I mean, look, Ben Stokes has been a wonderful player. He's been a match winner on occasions, been a match loser on other occasions. We might remember the catch that he shelled against Australia in a Test match, threw the ball up a little bit prematurely, lost them the go. But look, he's a match winner. His batting is nowhere near as you can't call him an all-rounder anymore. You call him a captain who bowls a bit and bats well. Should be batting at 7, and that's basically it. The problem they've got going forward, Jack, is Root doesn't want the captaincy, and everyone else is stained by the booze-fueled nights and nights out in the tiles.
It's look. I think it's not just.
Is Mike Brealey still alive?
It's not just. He's still.
Send him a telegram.
Yeah, no, I saw a photo of him turning up at Lord's. I think
he was at Lord's. Yeah, a friend of mine overheard a conversation. He was talking to this woman who's, I think she had a psychiatric sort of background, and she was chatting with him all day. She said, "Oh, it's wonderful to see you. It's so unlikely that you would be, a man of your stature would be, an intellect would be at the cricket." Yes, well, I did used to captain England.
Yeah.
She had no idea.
Mike Atherton. Actually, of course, they did ruin the Test match. That should have been a full house on the final day to watch something really exciting, and the crowd was really, really poor because I think the England fans had had enough. To be quite honest, what did
There
Mike
is a sense now.
Yeah, but what did Mike Atherton say on the last day?
And for England, Bazball dies where it all began.
Where it all began, yeah.
Well, I can't see McCullum remaining in that position.
Or Key.
And I think Key's got to go too. But certainly Baz McCullum's got to go. As they're all saying, nice bloke. Don't know if he's much of a coach. And look, he could probably coach an Australian side better than he could this English side. But I don't think. Look, I just think it's the end of the road for a lot of these guys, and I don't know where they go from there because there's really no one knocking on the door at the moment.
Well, I think it's a management problem. There is enough talent there in that side. That should have been a really competitive Ashes last summer. On talent, they were a good match for Australia.
Well, Harry Brook, we mentioned him before. He's scored a squillion runs already, double tons, triple tons. He is profligate with his wicket. There's just no doubt about that. He was in Australia. He was against New Zealand the other night.
He cost them the series against India. He had they're on the ropes the final day, running down an easy target, and he decided with a couple of overs to go before lunch that he was going to start tonking them all around the ground. And of course, he lost his wicket, and that led India back in the match.
Yeah,
But plenty of talent. They've got enough talent to be really good. It just needs someone in charge who's going to say, we're going to prepare properly, we're going to do this the right way.
They need a keeper. They've got one, folks, but they won't play him. They need a spinner, and they don't really have one there either. There's a big jump down, much bigger jump down for our Test side to go into play Shield cricket, much bigger drop down in county grades, particularly if you're playing in the sort of second division. Stokes will go back to Durham and smack it around, get a few runs and make a few wickets, and probably there'll be a clamour for him to return, and I wouldn't count that out either. But moving on, well done, Black Caps. Just really just showed England how to play Test cricket, really. And over now to the World Cup, Jack. I'm finding it almost impossible to keep in touch of what's going on and who's winning and who's losing. But I'm going to say, like you, the French seem to be doing really well. The Brazilians play the Norwegians soon, and the Norwegians are pretty chipper about their
on Monday.
Prospects. Who do you like?
France have Paraguay. The French look absolutely the best side there.
Yeah, well, I'll leave that with you. We've got Origin. Do we have Origin next week? It is next week.
I think it must be next week. Yeah,
and where the Blues will go to. Go to Lang Stadium and good luck. I think they've only won 3 times to win the series since State of Origin began, and I can't see it happening. AFL, Jack, who we got tonight? Geelong play. Who they got tonight? It's actually at Geelong. It's all right. I'll fix it up. It should be a really good game. They've got the Lions. They play their own ground, Geelong really well. It's a long, narrow ground. It means they can protect the centre corridor really easily, and they do that really effectively there. I'd expect Geelong to go all right. Sydney Swans play the Bulldogs on Friday, Jack, and that's a game that the Bulldogs have to win, but I don't think they will. I think
I don't know. My prediction last week about the Swans was spot on. I didn't think they'd win, and they didn't.
No, but that's a little different. And that was a little different. You were right. I thought Sydney would beat the Brisbane Lions. Brisbane Lions' form's been a little bit checkered, but they were good last week. And if it wasn't for Chad Warner, Sydney probably would have gone down by about 15 goals. But Western Bulldogs, it's a game they need to win. They've got a more settled side, but I'd expect Sydney to win that. The other big, there's not really any big games. This is the other thing I was going to say, Jack. So we've got a game tonight. We've got 2 games on Friday, starting within half an hour of each other. And then on Saturday, we've got a game that starts at 1:15, Hawthorn Melbourne. And then 20 minutes later, the Giants play Fremantle. 4:15, Gold Coast Suns play Collingwood. And there's only one Saturday night game, Jack, and that's Richmond. That's Richmond Carlton at the G.
Is that to fit in with the requirements of the paid television?
I can't see how. Aren't you splitting your market if you're doing that on the Friday night? Obviously, the free-to-air will cover the Sydney game. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to watch more than one game, you have to press record on the button. I'm struggling to understand some of their fixturing. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
What do we get here? We get Thursday night, Friday night, at least 2 on the Saturday, and generally 3 on the Saturday and 1 on the Sunday.
Of course, there's no Saturday afternoon games free to wear anymore in Australia. And so, while they're loading those up, I think in Sydney you'd be able to catch the Giants game, but I don't think you'll be able to certainly not do that in the southern markets, in Melbourne, etc. So, I don't know. I just see this fixture being a little bit crazy. And the other thing, of course, Jack, the Australian women's cricket team is playing in its umpteenth final, this for the ICC World Cup. Not sure, are they playing England or South Africa, Jack? That would have been worked out in the last few days. Australia beat India to get there. England women play South Africa tomorrow in the wee hours tomorrow. So whoever wins that will go on to play Australia. And Australia is a very different side to the one that fielded even a couple of years ago. But by gee, they're still good. So good luck to them and well done to make the final. Anything else for us, Jack?
No, that's it.
All righty. Well, that does take us out for the end of episode 163, recorded on the 2nd of July, 2026. I want to thank Jack for his opinions and preparation for this show, and also want to encourage our listeners to drop us a line and let us know if there are particular issues that you want us to delve into, or if you want to make a comment or criticism about the show, please feel free. We've got a little pile of things that we need to get through with our listeners, so we will do all of that next week. In the meantime,
can I just plead nothing complimentary?
Jack doesn't like being flattered. I mean, he says that, but he doesn't. But anyway, yes, we will do whatever we can to get you on the show. So that's all good. And yes, that leaves me with nothing further to say but goodbye, and we will be back next week. See you later, folks.